hate to interrupt the conversation, but we did set aside this time for peacemaking, so I'm going to gently restore you to your seat. And hopefully do like a 1 minute recap. So we are here to repurpose and redeem conflict. Conflict is not the enemy. Conflict is not something that you avoid at all costs. Rather, conflict is an opportunity. And it's an opportunity first and foremost to do what? Glorify God, right? Conflict is an opportunity. It's a unique opportunity. When things are going great, glorifying God is pretty easy and not all that apparent. But when things get rough and we still glorify God and people see that, it is a unique opportunity to shine His light when there is conflict. So not only are we going to glorify God, 1 Corinthians 10:31, by the way, right now we're focusing on the second big opportunity that conflict provides us, and that is what? Okay, good. Get the log out, right? Or the log is that idol, right? Which is ironic because a lot of idols were made of wood, right? And then covered in. So we want to get the log out of our eye. Matthew 7, don't judge lest you be judged, for in the same manner that you judge, you will be judged. So when you see your brother has a speck in his eye, first you have to remove the log that is in your own eye. So to bring it then full circle, the one thing we have to recognize is that conflict reveals the idols that are in our hearts. Okay, conflict, let me say that again, and really think about this. Conflict reveals the idols that we have set up in our hearts. Okay? So, agree or disagree. If you disagree, why do you disagree with that statement? If you agree, why do you think that statement's true? Conflict reveals the idols that are in our heart.
It allows us to focus on the root cause of the conflict. And so if it's something that we're holding on so tightly to, self-evaluation moment, oh, maybe I am holding on too tightly to this and losing the big picture because of this one thing.
It shows us habits are things that we really need to change, because without that challenge and it comes up, we're not going to change unless we're really forced to. And so it's just like, oh, this is something that I'm not honoring God about. I've been doing it this way for so long. I need to change that.
Good. Jen?
Tim Keller wrote a marriage book, and I won't do this justice, but he talks about how when we're offended by our spouse not meeting a certain need and we feel like we are victims, it's actually just prompting us to see our self-centeredness, because really we are here to serve, not to be fulfilled in our various needs that we think we deserve. So in the same way, the conflicts can bring up these triggers that we have, and 50% of it belongs to us.
Good. Yeah, I think you did that, Justice. Very good. Yeah. We can elevate any desire. So it starts with the desire, right? James 4. Why do we fight? Why do we quarrel? Is it not the desires in your heart, right? So it starts out with a desire, and a lot of desires are good desires, right? And we talked a little bit about good desires, that we have the ability to elevate beyond what is healthy, right? What does that look like? What does that mean? What's a good desire? God-given good desire. Name one.
Working, providing for your family.
Working and providing for your family, right?
Helping people.
Helping others, good. Being healthy, yes. So, you're telling me that I can elevate the desire to help others to an unhealthy level? Right? I desire that, good thing. But then I demand it, and I put that before serving my family, maybe. And then I start to, when I start demanding that that happens, that I have time for that, and then I judge others that are preventing me from doing that, and then start to punish others because they're preventing me from doing that, right?
So Brad, an example of that would be being a gospel preacher, going constantly and holding meetings, and I've seen this happen to many men. Very good gospel preachers, I mean awesome gospel preachers, to the detriment of their whole life and family,
Right.
and destroy their family or their marriages over it. That's a good thing, taken too far.
Right. Good. Mike?
In helping others, you have to really understand exactly where it's coming from, because if you help others and they have a bad influence on your life and take you away from what you should be centered on, that is helping others to an extreme.
Yeah, good. Steve?
Back to what Dawson was saying, a very well-known gospel preacher years ago said, I was too busy going out trying to save the lost and then find the brethren that forgot to save my own children. I think that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to overlook the kingdom work that is right in front of us in our homes. Right? We forget that is kingdom work. When Jesus says, go out and preach and teach the lost, well, there are some right in our home that need the gospel just as badly as the people out there. Right? So,
Brad,
yeah.
along that line with the demon over in Luke, it's exactly what Jesus told him. He wanted to go with Jesus. Everyone couldn't travel with Jesus. And Jesus says, go tell your family.
Mm.
There's the kingdom work that you need to do. Go tell your family. And sometimes we forget locally we need to do the kingdom work. Not everybody can go broadly.
Right.
We can do it locally.
Yeah, good. Cool.
So, a statement that kind of, sounds weird in Ecclesiastes 7, we're warned, do not be excessively righteous and do not be overly wise. Why should you ruin yourself? And you're going, that sounds odd, right? Shouldn't we try to be as righteous as we can? You zoom out and you look at the context there of wisdom and follow being contrasted. But I kind of go with this concept of you have gone so far that you are now transgressing the spirit of what that righteousness was. You have now taken this to a level that's unhealthy, and your focus is so great on that it is now your ruin.
Right. Luckily, we are not studying Ecclesiastes this morning. Yeah, Micah.
Well, I've just noticed through the conflict that happened, this past week with my parents, and I saw a sharp decline in their ability to be independent. And it was a catch in my heart and something that I wrestled with God about, because I realized I don't get to plan my days. And I want to plan my days. I don't want to sit at the hospital. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't want to sit at the rehab center all day. I want to homeschool my kids. I want to run my business. I had evening activities planned. And for the unforeseeable future, I don't know how long those things get canceled and rearranged. And so just holding even our plans kind of with open hands.
Right, yeah. Exactly, yeah. Our plans, what we've got set up for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, those are desires, healthy desires to accomplish things in our family and in the kingdom. But what happens when those desires are not met? What happens when the answer is no? Jesse and then Don.
You just kind of touched on it. It occurred to me that this puts us in conflict with God. We can be conflicted with why God is allowing these things to happen, especially if they're good desires and it's a good prayer and that kind of thing. But those unmet expectations might put me. I know for me, I've questioned why why is this happening? Why are you allowing this to happen?
Don.
I really appreciate the way Micah said, with open hands, because that gives us imagery that if there is something that I am not willing to let go, and I'm clenching, that is becoming an idol, if it's not already. And so we've got to approach our life with open hands, that any blessing we get, it's with open hands, and we're not holding on to any of it.
Yeah, I know Dave Ramsey is big on the clenched fist for finances. Even like, okay, you got your paycheck, you want to hold on tight to that thing, right? But here's the thing with finance and with every other blessing in life, the tighter you hold on to it, the harder it is to get more blessings in there. Like if it's open, if it's closed-fisted, you can't receive either. And you also might not relinquish as much, but you also can't receive. So yeah, the open-fisted, the open-handed reception and giving of blessings is really critical. Steve?
I think sometimes, Brad, the conflict amongst or within ourselves is much stronger than the conflict with others. There are times we have so many things going on within our own selves. It's kind of like the old commercial where you got the good guy on one shoulder, the bad guy on the other shoulder. That conflict, in my life, it seems like it's tougher sometimes than it is handling issues with other people.
Right, yeah. That's true, yeah. Very good. And these are idols, whether they involve others or not. There are some things that don't obviously impact others, but are still idols.
I think one of the biggest problems we have is recognizing the idols.
Mm-hmm.
And to his point on page 111.
Okay.
Be getting heavy, I don't know. But
It's okay.
They're up a part of the page, third paragraph, second full paragraph, in the middle of it. It says, through the church, we are also surrounded by brothers and sisters in Christ who can teach us, lovingly point out our idols, and provide encouragement and guidance to our spiritual growth. And he cites Galatians 1 and Romans 15. Then he goes on to say, this requires that we commit ourselves to consistent involvement in a solid biblical church and seek regular fellowship and accountability for spirituality mature believers. So that falls right back into our theme for this whole year of fellowship and our growing together, our living together as a church family.
Yep.
And how we are to work with one another and be able to accept when somebody sees something in our lives that, hey, we need to make a change here, or
Right.
maybe adjust here.
Yeah, good.
And that's tough for us to do.
Yes. And to your lesson on Sunday, we actually have to know each other well enough to be able to see that, right? The closer you are, the people that know your character flaws the best are the people that in your home, right? Like your spouse knows your character flaws better than anybody else in this world. So guess what? Your spouse is the one you have to humble yourself the most to in order to grow. Like that's a tool God has blessed you with in spiritual growth, is a spouse that sees all of your ugliness, right? G.K. Chesterton or C.S. Lewis, I can't remember, one of those guys says, we have in marriage this funny thing that we know the failures of each other, and we actually can see them right? Everyone has a joke on, every married couple has a joke on each other. We can see those. And we have to help each other. Let's wrap up. Dawson is kind of getting into the cure for an idolatrous heart. But what else, before we get there, what else through, for me, page 109, this progression of an idol. What did you underline? What stood out to you in this section?
Idols always demand sacrifices.
Ooh.
So, the sacrifice is typically something surrounding you, right? That you're not giving up. You are giving up yourself in a way, but at the expense of what, right? And so, the thing that's appealing there is, let's just say, being the best marathon runner becomes your idol, right? And that's, you just eat, sleep, and breathe it 24/7. And it's like your family now takes a way back seat. Well, I've got to leave it out of the house. I've got to do this. All these things start falling apart. But there's this thing that you're desiring and desiring and desiring, and it's paying off in earthly terms for the sacrifice that you're putting in. And then you get so focused on it that you go, oh, I've lost everything around me. So it's like, yeah, you might be sacrificing your time or your attention for this idol, but it's all the collateral damage that is out of focus when that's happening.
Yep. Yeah, I saw a little reel or video or whatever, and this guy was like trying to put marriage into context. And he's like, hey, when you got married, you agreed to sacrifice yourself. If you're a husband, you agreed to sacrifice yourself. What, you walk down the aisle to an altar. What do you think happens at altars, bro? You were somebody was getting sacrificed. It was you that was sacrificing yourself in this relationship to say, I now will serve you, and I sacrifice myself for your good. And I will do that every day this day forward. Now, are there competing priorities? Sure. Is there kingdom work to do? Sure. But that's why we have to always be looking for the idols that we've set up in our heart, where we took a good desire and we started to demand it. No, I have to do this, and you're in my way, and I'm going to judge you and punish you. I mean, this is why I feel like this material is the most applicable and practical look at a Christian. Like, this affects your marriage, your friends, your siblings, your boss, your employees. This applies to all of that, right? So, what else? What else stood out to you?
Well, that second paragraph in that I punish. When we do so, we are essentially placing others on the altar of our idol and sacrificing them, not with pagan knives, but with the sharp edge of our tongues. And we all know this, that our tongue can pierce those that are closest to us, and those that piercing can come real quick.
Oh yeah.
Just offhand comments.
Yes.
Anger comment, and we know where to place that dagger, where it's gonna hurt the most.
Yeah, and it's so subtle. The video that I debated on Weather Showing today, he tells a story about how him and his wife were having company, having a big shindig at their house, and his wife had one idea of how to set things up, how to set up the food and all that. He had another idea, and they were in conflict. And he said, he voiced his opinion, like, well, I think it's better if we do this. And he said it just started to escalate and grow. And so his tactic is he stopped making eye contact. And so that's all he does. He just withholds eye contact and says, sure, yeah, we can do whatever you want to do. Yeah, put it over there. Yeah, you can put it there. That's fine. No harm in that. Sure, whatever. And he doesn't make eye contact. And that's his subtle, unpleasant cues over a long period of time, which is an age-old method of inflicting punishment. When we roll our eyes at others because of something they said, we're punishing. We're sacrificing them on the altar of our desires. Right? You ever thought about it that way? Now, and again, that's why I said, if we really read this and we really take it in, I think we realize we're much worse than we give ourselves credit for. We're much worse. We judge and punish people all day, every day. We have so many idols in our hearts, right? We will find ways to hurt or punish people so that they will give in to our desires, right? Trying to, yeah. He on page 109. This his example of his friend. Was not his. He says he told me that his wife was not pleased. I'm at the top of page 109 with the fact that he was giving so much time to a particular ministry. Here's kingdom work, right? He closed by saying, "And as we all know, when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy." And he laughed when he said it, but it's true. Wives have a strong ability to make everyone else miserable. But you know what? Husbands do too. He says, when we're irritable, unhappy, perpetually critical of everything that's happening, and our child's name ends with an exclamation, right? Like Catherine, Olivia, Maggie, Jonah! You probably heard that. Right? When our child's name ends with an exclamation point, guess what? We're slowly setting up our desire for an obedient child as an idol. If we're not careful, we can demand, judge, and punish, right?
Fred,
Yeah.
I know many of you are not there yet, but as you get older and your body starts changing, your spouse's body starts changing, the aches, the pains, a lot of times it becomes more of a self-centered issue. I'm not feeling well today. Why is she feeling good today and I'm not feeling good today? And these are conflicts. These are actually that become idols because you start concentrating. Why am I this way? She's not this way.
Right.
And that's part of aging.
Yep.
And that's part of life, and that's part of the conflicts you have to control. So I guess you take this from one of the things you said back here was we were supposed to confess our idols and talk about it, which we don't do. We don't confess our faults either, but I'll confess this. Look forward to this, embrace it when you get there, because maybe you'll remember an old man saying, when you get to a certain age, your body starts taking over and it becomes more of a self-centered issue.
Yep.
Am I dying today? These type of things. How sick am I? Why are they okay? Why are people at my age doing okay over here and I'm not? And I think this is all part of the internal conflict that creates conflict with your spouse as you get
Yes.
older too.
Yes. Well, it's already started in our house. Every morning.
Maturing quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Every morning we have a battle of who got the worst sleep. And I figured out that the way to win this battle is to wake up and be the first to say, "Did I keep you up last night?" And then it's a preemptive strike of, I surely got worse sleep than you. I saw every hour. I'm like, oh, really? That one? I heard you snoring. So I know from 2 to 4 when I was awake and you were snoring that you were doing just fine. And yeah, now again, small, low level, but where we have this desire, we're self-centered, we're selfish people. We turn inwardly. We want pity. We want respect. We want love. And so we do stupid little things like that, right, Mike?
It's like we go out of our way to try to find a leverage to be able to do these things like, okay, this is exactly what I'm talking about here. And leverage can be a real ugly thing if you use it for bad.
Right, yes. Leverage. Now, why would we need leverage? It's because we're trying to push people in the way that we want them to go, right? We want leverage. So we will use leverage. And what the author is trying to point out here is that the Bible says, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a person is an idolater. Greed makes me an idolater. The fact that I really want a shiny new vehicle makes me an idolater. Yes, when I desire it so much that I start to demand it and do things that actually take me further away from the people around me and from God in order to get it, right? And I judge and I punish people for standing in the way. Okay. Last thing before anything else about the progression of an idol.
I don't know about the progression, but
Yep.
105, like
Yes.
the questions asking yourself.
Yes.
Is this an idol? Really hit home. Definitely the first one about what am I preoccupied with? What's the first thing on my mind in the morning and the last thing on my mind at night? That is so like.
Yeah, red flag. Red flag could be an idol,
Yes.
right? Yep. So what am I doing? And I like the let's see. Okay, it's in the next part of retracing. But yeah, anything else about the progression of an idol?
Just the bigger concept of one word, control.
Mm-hmm.
Self-control versus control.
Right.
That's really where the heart of it all starts and progresses to.
Yep. Control, manipulation. How do I get things to go the way I want them to? Right? Because see, I have this desire, I want this to happen, so I'm gonna work everybody so that I get that, right?
Well, it's a fine line of self-evaluation on these things as well, right? Because you just go, let's say, I have something going on tomorrow and, just one of my things before I go to bed is just run through a checklist so I know I'm prepared in the morning, right? Like, we can't eschew being diligent and responsible and, doing the appropriate amount of efforts either, right? It can't just be like, well, I thought about this before Jesus take the wheel.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna prepare for this because it'll become an idol, right? So it's like you have to be very self-aware
Mm-hmm.
if it's going one way or the other, because it's not good either way, right? Just like the peacemaking is to be peace faking or attacking, right? It's like you gotta find that balance.
Exactly, and that's where conflict comes in. Because when things become an idol, we will create conflict. And so that's the beauty of this, that yeah, the idol starts in you, but then it never stays there. It always impacts others, and we always end up with conflict. And that's where God's trying to tell us here, hey, I gave you conflict for a reason. I didn't just let you wallow in your sin. I made your sin adversely impact those around you so that you would be corrected. Right? Because if there were no adverse impacts, why would I ever, in the DOD, if there's no blood, there's no foul. If it doesn't hurt, we don't care that we didn't account for it. Unless there's a soldier somewhere that's running out of ammunition, I don't care. Right? That's where the rubber meets the road. So, God blessed us with conflict. Okay? Talk about repurposing and redeeming conflict. God blessed us with conflict so that it would point out the idols in our heart. You see the paradigm shift there? He blessed us with pain so that we wouldn't accidentally chop our arm off and not realize it. Right? That hurts for a reason. This hurts for a reason. So conflict is, in a way, a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it allows us to see the idols in our hearts. See?
Going back to something what Micah said about our parents. As you get older, talking over. This is part of me that looks at it and say, I love to warn people because when I sit in the pews like this, I didn't have an older person warning me what's going to happen. So I apologize for doing this. But there's a conflict going on in parents too when you get our age. We don't want to burden. We don't want to burden our children. That becomes an idol to us. That becomes something to us is we don't want to burden our children. So what do? We become stubborn. We become like we don't want them having to take care of us. We don't want to. They've got their family to raise. So for older people, it's a little. Sometimes the idols are different than they were when we were growing up, where it might be the job or it might be something like this or trying to get ahead. It's stability. We can still do it, and that's an idol. That is a blockage. It's there. It's a conflict within ourselves that create a conflict within our children. So both sides have conflicts on that line. It's sometimes the unwritten conflict. The kids go talk among themselves. Can't get mom and dad to do this. Mom and dad are talking. I don't know why they keep pushing us to do this. We can still do this. And those are conflicts in family conflicts. But when it comes back, you have to look at it. It becomes an idol of self-sustaining within yourself.
Yeah.
I hope that's clear what I'm saying.
I really appreciate that comment because I have felt that too. I'm like, why aren't mom and dad visiting more? Why doesn't mom feel free to just come up here and stay? Well, it's because she doesn't want to be a burden. And I recognize that. But sometimes it's so adamant that I'm like, well, she don't want to be here. I guess she just doesn't want to be here, you know? So that's actually really helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've, yeah.
Let me just add
Yes.
to that, because I think Dad would appreciate so much the things Steve has said today, because he has told us kids that he can already see that this has been a blessing in his life, that he broke his hip. And he has been more discouraged and depressed than I've ever seen him this week. And then he finally kind of turned a corner yesterday and he said, I see areas in my life that have needed to be fertilized. And so I'm thanking God for this opportunity to see some areas that need to be tweaked, that I need to work on. And that's part of it.
Yes.
That he is dependent on other people for help. He doesn't have to stay independent. He doesn't have to be the caretaker.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. It's hard.
It's especially hard. Sorry I'm on this, and I don't mean, especially hard. Take Boyd, for instance. He served as an elder. He served as a preacher for 150 years. I mean, you take a look. It's hard on us because we have served. We have been serving. We don't want people to serve us. We want to serve. So when it comes time to where we need to be served, we have to accept that. And I'm talking to myself now, and my kids and stuff. I don't like to accept that help. I don't want to accept that help. It's hard stepping out of a pulpit. It's hard stepping back and saying, I can't do this anymore. Those things are hard. And it takes sometimes an eye-opening event that God provides where you open your eyes to that and say, hey, we are where we are. But I can appreciate what Boyd's feeling because that is a rough, tough thing to accept.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So, how do we get rid of these idols?
When you're old, you just die.
You just die.
That's the ultimate.
That gets rid of all of it.
Well, I think in addition to death, there are other means.
Possibly before.
Yep. We might be able to get a few moments before death to cure that. So he kind of summarizes anything that we love, fear, or trust is an idol. And the reason it's an idol is because those are worship words. We love things, right? We love God. And we fear God. And we trust God. Those are things, those are worship words. So, the first thing he says is, how do you get deliverance from the judgment that comes from idolatry? What is the cure? What is the means of deliverance from judgment? Right. What else? Look to God. How does God deliver us from judgment for idolatry? Jen?
So through Jesus, and I feel like if I'm super aware of my own idols, and I'm like, okay, I'm on it. I'm gonna try to just really let Christ live through me, and it feels really hard, and I kind of feel like I belong in a Superman movie or something. You know, you just feel like no one else is doing this, but I'm gonna do it. But thankfully, there's a quote from a book that talked about forgiving people, and the quote was, Jesus is not asking us to try harder, but to trust that the work has already been done to bring us into his family. And so it really, if we can feel less like Superman and everyone else is a villain, and feel more like Christ has paved my way, I just have to hold on to him and follow behind him and just walk in his steps. For me, that's super helpful.
Yes. Yeah. Idolatry is worshiping, serving, and trusting in something. Worshiping it, right? So when we are worshiping an idol, we are slaves to that. So he points out Exodus 20. The one type of slavery was Egyptian slavery. And he mentions this, God mentions this several times. He set up a reminder, a ceremony. He says in Exodus 20, verse 2 and 3, I'm on page 110, the deliverance from judgment. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. Who brought them? They marched out boldly and victoriously. They vanquished their enemies before them? No. The Lord brought you out. The Israelites did nothing for that. They just hung out until the Egyptians said, all right, get out of here, because of what God did. So that's the pattern. The pattern is that you don't rescue yourself from idolatry. You are rescued from the judgment that comes from idolatry. You are rescued. God plucks you out, even through baptism. Baptism is God's work, not ours. God washes. God gives us a clean conscience. God removes our sins. God raises us up to walk in newness of life. It's not our work. That's God's work. God does. God is the one acting in that. So God has provided the cure for our idolatry by sending his Son to experience the punishment. And through that, through Christ, we become righteous. Yeah.
If we do recognize that idol, then the devil changes his tactic and then starts helping us beat ourselves up that we had that idol.
Yes.
He's gonna keep working, and that's, and I think it was Kim that Wednesday night that said that we've got to identify the devil, that this is him. We've got to be realistic about that, using that word more often, that the devil's doing it. And I think that pointing out this is an idol, it seems so big, but it is, that this is an idol in our lives. Then recognizing the devil's, then it's not going to all of a sudden stop because I went, oh God, okay, I got it, I see it now. No, the devil's then going to go, okay, I'm going to use it this way. We have to constantly be aware and refocus ourselves back on God and use the people. It's down at the bottom of page 110. The three vehicles to convey his grace: his Bible, his Spirit, and his church.
Right.
He puts people in our lives. Hebrews 12:1. There are witnesses that are there. We're not alone, but we can't. He's prowling.
Right. Yeah. And I was talking about this over the weekend, just thinking through this. I think Satan loves for us to be legalists, because if we are legalists and we think we earn our salvation, it produces two things: either self-righteousness or self-loathing, right? If it's up to me and I live a good enough life to earn my salvation, then I feel self-righteous and I go, look at me, I'm pretty good. I'm glad I'm not like all those other people over there. And then if that's not the case, and we can never live, we've got all these idols and we just can't get rid of them, then we go, I don't deserve it, I'm terrible, I might as well not even try. So I'm just gonna go my own path and just forget about this religion thing because I can't do it anyway, right? So self-righteousness or self-loathing, one or the other. And then even if you do manage to put it together enough to be here on Sundays, you still go, yeah, I just feel really guilty because I'm such a hypocrite right now, right? I think Satan wants us. He's like he either wants us to lean into our idols, or to feel really good because we don't have any, right? Or diminish them, like, oh, that's not really an idol. It's a healthy desire. It's not an idol, right? Okay. So deliverance from judgment comes from God. Therefore, there's now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Because through Christ Jesus, the anointed King Jesus, the law of the Spirit of life set me free from the law of sin and death. Okay? So, but that's judgment, right? So we don't have to fear judgment for idolatry because of Jesus. But we still want to have deliverance from the specific idols today, not just wait until we're dead, right? So look at that. We'll pick up there. This is on page 110, and we will finish the chapter. I know this is week 3 in this chapter, but this is really paradigm shifts for me of how to view conflict and how to view desires and idols. So we'll finish out chapter 5 next Sunday and maybe even get into chapter 6 on confession.